Hey there, fellow adventurers. It's Christine, and I just got back from a 2.5-week road trip around Spain and Portugal. I went to 9 different cities and I rented a car. So today I am going to give you 7 great tips for stress-free road trips. Now, as most of you probably already know, I'm from the United States, and this road trip that I took was in Spain. So these tips are especially good for road trips in foreign countries. The first thing a lot of people wonder about is whether you need a special driver's license to drive in a foreign country. This depends on the country, but here in Spain, I did not need a special license. I just had to bring my valid driver's license from my state back in the United States and have my passport. All right, so let's get started with the first tip. Now, the first thing to consider when going on a road trip, especially in a foreign country, is what car you're going to use. For me, I rented a car. So my first tip has to do with renting your car. And I highly recommend that you go ahead and just go online and rent it from there. First, I checked prices online, and then I went ahead to the car rental place the day before I needed my rental to check out what the prices would be. And it was more than double the price to rent the car in person. And when I spoke with the rental car agents, they said it is almost always cheaper to rent the car online. Second tip, be sure to know the emergency breakdown number of the car rental place. I was lucky and it was written right on the window. There was a sticker on the window. I'm sure it's also in the little pamphlets that they give you when you rent the car. But make sure that you know that number, and it might be a good idea to just go ahead and save it in your phone just in case something happens. I was unfortunate enough to have a breakdown when I was on my trip. I drove over a curb and got a flat tire, and it took 3 hours. Here in Spain, things don't move very quickly. It took about 3 hours. The tow truck came, tried to repair the tire. They could not because it was completely slashed. But the most important thing was that I was not just stuck on the side of the road. There was a number I could call, hit 2 for English, and was able to get with somebody who could walk me through the process of getting a new vehicle. And you may consider this to be fortunate or unfortunate, but I actually had passengers with me when all of this happened. So my third tip is related to this, and that is if you want to have company while you're traveling, especially if you're a solo traveler, but even if you're with somebody and you have some extra space in your car, you can make some extra money by using an app called Blablacar. Blablacar is an app that allows you to post your trip on the app, and then others who are in the city you're coming from can hitch a ride with you to the city you're going to. So you can list your trip, you can list if you're stopping in more than one city on the way, and they can sign up and you can say how much you're going to charge them. Blablacar makes a suggestion for how much you should charge, but you can change it if you want. I had 3 people in my car when I broke down. It was unfortunate because they had to wait an extra 3 hours, which made me feel terrible, but also it was fortunate because they spoke Spanish and the tow truck driver only spoke Spanish, and my Spanish is más o menos. It's not great. I used Blablacar on 2 different sections of my road trip. I carried a couple of fellow Americans from Lisbon down to Sevilla, and then I brought 3 Españoles. I brought 3 Spanish folks from Granada to Valencia. So other times I wanted to have the car to myself, blast my music, and so I was able to pick and choose when I wanted to have people accompany me. All right, my next few tips here are all about making it less stressful switching cities frequently. So again, I did 9 cities in just 2.5 weeks, which means every few days I'm trying to find accommodations, trying to find a place to park the car, find and maybe meet some friends along the way. It can get really stressful, and very quickly you can kind of run out of energy and not want to deal with the whole process. First is to decide whether you need to book your places ahead of time or whether you can just show up and stay in a place without booking. Now, this is going to depend on the time of year and where you're going, of course. If you're going to show up to Barcelona in the middle of the summer, I don't recommend just showing up at a hostel and knocking on the door because you probably won't get a room. However, this was winter when I was traveling, so I was able to just show up. I stayed in 3 or 4 Airbnbs, a couple of hotels, and 1 hostel. Some of them I called ahead of time, some of them I showed up. One of the hotels I showed up and they had to switch. I stayed for 2 nights and they put me in 1 room the first night and I had to switch rooms the second night, no big deal. One place I just showed up and stayed in a hostel for 1 night. And of course, Airbnbs, you have to book ahead of time, but you can book them the night before. I tried to book a couple days in advance just in case I was rejected or they had to cancel on me or something like that. For Airbnbs, of course, you can just go on Airbnb and search the city. I always look at Google Maps as well, and if you check on Google Maps, there are little tan or yellow sections of cities indicated on Google Maps. And those are where they're typically kind of the downtown areas, the more commercial areas. So the yellow sections indicate, I think, commercial zones. Generally, I'll either Google where the center of the city is, where the best place to stay is, or I'll just look for those yellow, tan sections in Google Maps and then use Airbnb to find places that are around those areas. Another great resource is hostelworld.com. Hostelworld, I don't typically book through the website, but it's a great place to see ratings of hostels and how close they are to the center of the city. And then you can either just show up or you can call them. When I showed up, it was always a couple of euro, 2 to 4 euro cheaper than it was to book online. So showing up can save you some money as well. Tip number 4 is to find parking before you go. Figure out where you're gonna park before you get to the city. Now, if you are traveling mostly in the countryside, this probably will not be an issue, but I traveled mainly to more populated cities, and especially cities like Valencia in Spain, Madrid, Lisbon, Portugal. You're not gonna find free parking, especially in the downtown area, and you can show up and just park at a parking garage, but it could be really expensive, 25 plus euros for a single night. However, a great place to park in some cities is at the closest airport. Depending on the city, Lisbon was a great place for this. The airport was not far away. A taxi, or actually they have Uber there, was not very expensive. And so it cost me 4 euro a night to park the car, and then I could take an Uber in to the city and an Uber back to the airport when I was done. Easy peasy, no problem at all. I did the same thing in Valencia. The airport's actually really close in Valencia, but the cab ride was much more expensive. It was something like 30 euro to get into the city and 20 to 25 when I had to go back. It was also the middle of Las Fallas, which is a major festival there, and some of the streets were shut down, which made it worse. But know this ahead of time, whereas other towns like Sevilla, I found free parking on the street. I just had to walk 20 minutes to get to my place. And of course, you may be able to find Airbnbs or hotels or hostels that have parking included or for an extra fee that's cheaper than the garage. When I was in Salamanca, Spain, they had a tiny little garage because most people at the hostel don't drive there. But I rented it for 12 euro a night. I was only there one night. Put my car right in the same building as where I was staying. Worked out perfectly. But I highly recommend knowing where you're gonna park before you arrive. 2 websites that can help you with this are parkopedia.es and car-parking.eu. There's others online if you just search where to park in and name either the country or the city. And I'll include those links down in the description so you can find them. The Parkopedia I used in one city that I went to, and it labels all the garages with how expensive they are. You just have to make sure that you look at what the amount of time that it's telling you the prices for, because obviously if you're staying multiple days, you need to know the 24-hour rate, not the 2-hour rate. All right, tip number 5 is about making friends. Once you arrive in a new city, I mean, you're on a road trip. Every day you're gonna be checking out touristy sites probably, especially if you're only staying for a couple of days. But you probably would like to do some things with other people. So these next couple tips are a couple different ways to make friends. The first of these is to book a free tour on the first full day that you're going to be in the city. Pretty much every city offers English tours. In my case, the day before I was going to arrive, I would just go onto tripadvisor.com and search free tours and the name of the city that I was going to. Tip number 6 is also related to meeting friends, and that is to use the apps Couchsurfing and or Meetup. So Couchsurfing is known as an app that allows you to find a place to stay, but it is also an app that allows you to socialize. And the same goes for meetup.com. There's an app for Meetup that you can download onto your phone. Each time you arrive in a place, with Couchsurfing, you can just open the app and it'll adjust to where you're now located. And you can say that you're free to hang out, what you're interested in doing, join other groups of people, chat and meet up somewhere, make some friends with other people that are traveling around. And oftentimes there are locals that are parts of these groups as well. So if you want to practice your language skills, you will have a chance to do that. Meetup.com, you will have to join a group for this, but you can search the types of activities you're interested in. Typically I would search for international groups or expat groups. And most nights of the week, different groups will have a meetup or 2 going on, so you can find something you're interested in and go attend it. A lot of these also have language exchanges, so you can search for intercambios, in Spain at least, and you'll have a chance to practice with some native speakers, grab a cerveza or a vino, and spend the evening making new friends. Last, but definitely not least, my favorite tip is to take advantage of saving places in Google Maps. Anytime anyone suggests some place that I should visit, be it a tourist site, a restaurant, a bar, a hotel, whatever it is, I open up Google Maps, search for it, find it, and flag it. And in Google Maps, you can star places, you can mark them as want to go, you can save them as favorites, you can create your own lists. And so I have a list of all the different places that I've either visited and really liked, saved them as favorites, places I want to go that people have suggested to me. And then whenever I go someplace new, I save the place I'm going to be staying as a starred location. And also where my car is parked as a starred location. And that way, not only while you're on the trip can you go back and say, oh, I remember someone suggested this restaurant, and you can find it on the map and go visit it with your new friends. But also later on, when you're out of the country, when you've gone back home and some of your friends say, oh, I'm planning to go visit Lisbon, do you have any suggestions? You can just open up Google Maps and say, oh yeah, my favorite place was this restaurant on the corner of this street, and you can share the information, they can save it in their maps, and it lets you go back and really have sort of a journal when you look at your map of the world of all the places that you visited, that you liked, and lets you always have that available for whenever you want to go back to it. And that was tip number 7. So that wraps up my 7 tips for stress-free road trips. If you have any additional tips that you'd like to share when you take road trips, please add them in the comments below. I'd love to hear it because I do plan to take at least a couple more road trips while I'm here in Europe, and I would always love to have more ideas to make them stress-free. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed these tips and like the channel, please subscribe below. And as always, stay tuned for more.